The world laughs at me as a weak and incompetent empress. The emperor lusts for beauty, so I gathered the finest women from every corner of the realm and personally delivered them to his bed. The emperor craves endless pleasure and indulgence, so I offered him a jade cup of dear-blood wine and lifted it to his lips with my own hands. The censors mocked me for my powerlessness. The concubines sneered at my softness. They schemed and clawed for favor and authority while I fought for nothing, because I was far too busy. The memorials piled high in Taiji Hall were reviewed by me. Every vermilion annotation was written by my hand. Every decree that governed the realm flowed from my brush. In this life I have never once fought anyone for anything. I simply, gently, and softly drew the entire world into the palm of my hand. To be honest, His Majesty was never destined to sit on the throne. The late emperor had many sons. Yuan Hongyi ranked 12th. His mother had been a low-born palace maid who died young. Among all those dragon sons and phoenix grandsons, he was the most forgettable. Yet fortune turned, and nothing could stop it. One by one, the elder princes ahead of him died young or were exiled. Today you submit a memorial accusing me of colluding with enemy states. Tomorrow I send men to burn your residence to the ground. We fought back and forth until only 2 remain. The late emperor lay dying, his body ruined by wine and illness on the dragon bed. 3 princes knelt beside him, claiming to attend their father. In truth, every pair of eyes was fixed on the throne. The late emperor stirred from his stupor and saw that the other 2 could no longer endure the vigil. They had slipped away to rest in the side hall. Only Yuan Hongyi remained kneeling upright, eyes rimmed red. The late emperor's cracked lips moved. "Why does my son weep?" Yuan Hongyi wiped his tears. "Your Majesty's illness is grave. This son's heart is torn with sorrow. I would give my own body to take your place if I could." The late emperor stared at him for a long time. In those aged, cloudy eyes, tears slowly gathered. A prince who had lost his mother early and received no favor, yet wept so shamelessly at his father's sickbed. What of the other 2? They were surely in the next hall, already dividing the empire. The late emperor sighed, summoned the 4 regent grand ministers, and left his final edict. Thus the most overlooked prince became the new son of heaven. Before all this, I was already Yuan Hongyi's princess consort. My family was nothing special, my status unremarkable. He ranked last among the princes. I was equally invisible among the noble daughters. When the marriage decree came that year, the entire capital sneered that a broken pot had been matched with a cracked lid doomed to scrape through life together. No one imagined that broken pot would one day be carried onto the dragon throne. Yuan Hongyi had been ignored by the late emperor for so long that even his marriage had been arranged on a whim. During a palace banquet, the late empress learned the 12th prince was already 20 and still without a principal wife. She pointed casually, and my fate was sealed. The other princes received fiefs and grand mansions, heralds clearing their path wherever they went. Yuan Hongyi and I were left in the most remote Qingyi palace in the entire imperial harem. The halls were vast but long neglected. Plaster peeled from the walls in great patches. Any steward with a shred of authority could stand in the courtyard wrapped in furs and berate us at will. Yuan Hongyi had no desire to attend his father's illness. He had never once looked me in the eye. Now that the old man lay dying, he suddenly remembered this son? Watching his elder brothers all these years radiant, powerful, glorious, I knew resentment burned in his chest. I helped him into plain robes and spoke softly. "Your Highness is a prince. Your father is ill. You must go. But you cannot go like a fool." He tilted his head. "What do you mean?" I smoothed the folds at his collar. "When you reach the dragon bed, say nothing else. Kneel there honestly. Do not rise even when His Majesty awakens. Remember, the man you most longed to notice you now lies right beside you. When he opens his eyes and sees your knees nearly worn raw, he will understand." Yuan Hongyi was not clever, but he had one saving grace. He listened to me. All I wanted was for the dying emperor to glimpse his son's filial piety, and perhaps grant him a princely title and a fief so we could live quietly somewhere far away. But I had underestimated a father's love. After only 5 days at the sickbed, the late emperor secretly summoned the 4 regent grand ministers and drafted his edict in silence. The next day, the other 2 princes were banished to their fiefs and forbidden to enter the capital without summons. Overnight, everyone became warm and solicitous. The chief eunuch of the inner palace came in person. The leaking roof was repaired with new tiles. The coal shortage of half a year was suddenly resolved, the extra called a token of respect from below. Eunuchs who once stood in furs, shouting at us, now bowed lower than the stone lions at the gate. When Yuan Hongyi returned, his steps were light. That night he held me tightly, the scent of rouge and powder from the favored women of the harem still clinging to him. "My love, in all my life I have never felt what it means to be valued. He whispered against my ear, voice trembling with emotion. Today, how many gifts, how many sweet words. Their eyes grew hotter and hotter, as if one breath could wash away every humiliation of these years. I know that from this moment on, the man before you is no longer the foolish, penniless prince in that tiny courtyard. Power is the finest forge. Once touched, a man changes forever. In the first 3 months after his ascension, memorials in the imperial study piled 3 feet high every day. One urgent report from the Ministry of Revenue concerned flood relief in the southeast. The people were scattered, the land ruined, and the court was begged for silver. I read those lines again and again until my vision blurred. Life and death, reward and punishment. A single stroke of the brush decided the fate of tens of thousands. Yet Yuan Hongyi found it unbearable. He sat on the dragon throne as if on needles, approved a few memorials, then grew bored. The things they write, we understand not a single word. He called me over with a weary yawn. You read them first, pick the important ones and tell us. I chose the vital memorials. He took the brush, scrawled a few casual strokes, and considered the matter finished. Before long he grew too lazy even to listen. He pushed the stack toward me. My love, help us approve these. Our backside is dying. We refused to look at another word. I waved my hands repeatedly. Your Majesty, this cannot be. Approving memorials is the Son of Heaven's sacred duty. This consort is merely a woman of the inner palace. How dare I touch the imperial brush? He pressed me into the chair and spoke as if it were the most natural thing in the world. You are our empress, mother of the nation. What harm is there in approving a few memorials? Besides, you used to draft memorials in our stead. Your handwriting is identical. Who would ever know? I lowered my head to the papers spread before me and felt heat rise in my chest. For the first few days I still refused, presenting only the most critical memorials for him to review personally. He stayed in the inner chamber of the imperial study, eating tribute grapes from the western regions, listening to a musician play the pipa. If you have read them, it counts as us having read them. Go now. Do not disturb us. His indulgence grew worse by the day. He was obsessed with song and dance. From the famous Hongshuo brothel, he summoned 30 dancers and had them practice new routines day and night in the side hall. He complained the old furnishings lacked grandeur and ordered every piece of bronze in the bedchamber melted down to cast into gold. Those who understood his taste presented today a screen embroidered with 100 birds paying homage to the phoenix, tomorrow a beautiful Hu girl from the western regions. He accepted everything, clapping and praising loudly. When censors urged economy, he teased the cricket hidden in his sleeve and retorted, "We once lacked even coal in Qingyi Palace. Now we merely enjoy ourselves a little, why should we not?" After court, several censors blocked my palanquin in the imperial garden, tears and snot streaming down their faces. "Empress, we beg you to speak to His Majesty. If this continues, the realm will fall." I helped each of them up, my face full of concern. "My lords, you are all devoted to the country. How could this palace not share your worry? Very well. This palace will go and advise him again." That night in the imperial study, Yuan Hongyi sat with his newest Hu girl in his arms, drinking wine. When I entered, he smiled broadly. "The Empress has come. Come, sit and drink with us." I sat opposite him and spoke gently. "Your Majesty, today several censors submitted memorials of remonstrance, saying Your Majesty neglects state affairs. This consort's heart is also uneasy." He waved a hand dismissively. "What do those old men matter? The prosperous empire our father left us, is it not meant for our enjoyment?" I filled his cup. "Who says otherwise? This consort has a way that can silence them without interfering with Your Majesty's pleasures. Oh, let us hear it." I smiled with hidden meaning. "At present the harem holds only a handful of women. They accuse Your Majesty of drowning in feminine charms. How unjust. Why not hold a proper selection? First, it silences the world. Second, when daughters of officials from every province enter the palace, their families' hearts will naturally turn toward Your Majesty. Who would dare gossip then?" His eyes lit up. He slapped his thigh. "As expected, the Empress thinks of everything. The beauty selection edict was drafted by my own hand. Batches of talented girls arrived one after another. I personally assigned their palaces and even decided their titles in advance." Yuan Hongji was so delighted he could not close his mouth, telling everyone, "Our Empress is the wisest woman under heaven." The reason my reputation for weakness spread everywhere was because I welcomed the late emperor's most favored concubine back into the palace. Li Jieyu returned from the nunnery and was installed as a second-rank palace maid in Fengyi Palace. She had entered the palace at 14 and become the late emperor's most beloved concubine in his final years. By custom, a childless concubine was to shave her head and pray for blessings after the emperor's death. But she had been unfaithful beside his sickbed, carrying on an affair with Yuan Hongyi. When she was sent to the nunnery, she was already pregnant with his child. 2 years earlier, when Yuan Hongyi returned from the sickbed, the rouge scent clinging to him had aroused my suspicions. A quick investigation revealed everything. I wrote a letter and had a trusted aide deliver it secretly to my elder brother, ordering round-the-clock surveillance without alerting a soul. With the regent grand ministers holding court outside and me approving memorials inside, stabilizing the harem, Yuan Hongyi drowned himself in pleasure every night after court. I had personally offered him blood wine several times. The harem overflowed with beauties, yet no matter how many tonics were prepared, there was never any sign of movement in any belly. Doubt grew in my heart. I bribed the head physician of the Imperial Medical Bureau with a heavy purse. He stammered. His Majesty's primordial yang is weak. Regarding offspring, it is somewhat more difficult than for ordinary men. Somewhat more difficult meant it was still possible. But with my position at the pinnacle of court and harem, countless eyes watching, I could not gamble on probability. In that instant, my thoughts turned. I coaxed Yuan Hongyi into personally offering sacrifices at the Imperial Ancestral Temple and deliberately arranged for Li Jieyu to have an opportunity to approach him. The two caught fire like dry tinder meeting flame, unable to restrain themselves even before the late emperor's spirit tablet. When Yuan Hongyi learned he had another son, he rejoiced as if he had found a priceless treasure. That night he came to me, pacing in panic. If the censors and ministers discover what happened between us and Li Jieyu, they will dash their heads against the pillars in the Great Hall. Our imperial son cannot be left to wander outside. My love, think of a way quickly. After he finished fretting, I spoke softly. Your Majesty, this consort actually has a plan. If it is wrong, you must not blame me. He seized my sleeve. Speak, we forgive you. Welcoming the late emperor's concubine back openly would be extremely difficult, I said, but slipping a palace maid into the palace is far simpler. In the nunnery, one consort recently died of illness. We can quietly add a new palace maid who changes her name and identity. As for the child, we will say this consort gave birth to him. From birth, his body was frail. He has been raised at his maternal grandparents' home. Now that his health has improved, it is time to bring him back. Yuan Hongyi's eyes blazed with excitement. He pulled me into a fierce embrace. Brilliant. The Grand Tutor often memorializes in secret, calling you a demonic empress and warning us to guard against you. We never believed him. You are clearly our virtuous wife and most capable assistant. I leaned obediently against his chest. The Grand Tutor must have some misunderstanding about this consort. You are my husband and the ruler of all under heaven. I serve at your side and understand your difficulties. Whatever others say, I pay no heed. As long as you trust me in your heart, it is enough. With those soft words I drew every secret from him. I showed nothing on my face, but in my heart I had already noted 3 characters. Lu Jipu. Lu Jipu headed the 4 regent grand ministers and held the post of Grand Tutor. His memorials went straight to Taiji Hall. My habit of approving documents in the imperial study was no longer news to them. Now they were making trouble. Naturally, it was because last month I had dismissed several of his disciples, his planted pieces in the 6 ministries. Once they were all uprooted, he could not sit still. After careful arrangements, the former Jieyu of the late emperor was transferred from the nunnery into Fengyi Palace as a second-rank palace maid. I did not trouble her. Instead, I bestowed a wig upon her. Set upon her head, it made her already luminous, watery eyes even more captivating. No wonder the late emperor could not leave her side in his final years. No wonder Yuan Hongyi lost his soul at a single glance beside the sickbed. This slave deserves 10,000 deaths, thanks to the Empress's mercy in saving my life. From this day forward, this slave obeys only the Empress's commands, even unto death. I personally helped her rise and straightened her side locks, smiling. What crime or no crime? Once inside the palace gates, the past is scattered like wind. I took the 2-year-old little Prince Ju Rei from the wet nurse's arms and teased him gently. In this harem, for mother and child to meet daily is a destiny cultivated over many lifetimes. This palace detests the separation of flesh and blood above all else. From now on you shall change your name to Anne and serve dutifully in Fengyi Palace. Thus the bond between mother and child may endure. She understood my meaning. Her eyes reddened. She bit her lip, clearly unwilling. This slave obeys the Empress's command. Zhu Qing watched Suluo's retreating back, worry plain in her eyes. Empress, this slave feels she is not resigned to remaining a mere palace maid. Forgive me for speaking plainly. That day we should have taken the little prince away outright and settled everything at once. I accepted the handkerchief a maid offered and slowly wiped my hands, smiling faintly. Not killing her is because I do not wish to create more trouble. If the child one day learns his true identity and is incited by others, he may turn against me. Better to keep her right before my eyes. No matter how far she runs, she cannot escape these 4 red walls. As long as she remains in this harem, am I afraid I cannot deal with a wretch who should have died long ago? The matter of the child recognizing his ancestors proceeded smoothly. Under my guidance, Yuan Hongyi did not announce the boy's imperial blood outright. Instead, he spoke circuitously in court. 2 years after ascending the throne, the harem still had few heirs, and he felt ashamed before the ancestrors. The ministers naturally comforted him. Several old officials stepped forward, saying His Majesty was in his prime and need not worry. Yuan Hongyi followed their lead, voice thick with emotion. We and the Empress actually have a son. From birth his constitution was weak. He has been raised at his maternal grandparents' home. Now that his health has greatly improved, we have brought him back to be personally raised by the Empress. A son born to the Empress is the legitimate heir. For the legitimate son to recognize his ancestors is only natural. Because the Cui clan rendered the merit of raising him, we promote the Empress's father from a 5th-rank idle post directly to the title of Marquis, and her elder brother Cui Mingzhe to the Ministry of Revenue. Her mother is granted a noble title as well. The entire Cui family enjoys full honors. Grand Tutor Lu Jipu was not pleased. Your Majesty, the Cui clan is merely the Empress's maternal family. Raising the child is their duty. What merit is there? Now Your Majesty uses this as pretext to grant them titles. If this precedent is set, in the future every Empress's maternal clan will be able to enjoy unearned rewards and rise to the heavens in a single step. Several of his disciples immediately stepped forward in support. The implication was clear. The Cui family was unworthy. I had long expected Lu Jipu to seize the chance to cause trouble. The night before, I had coached Yuan Hongyi on his reply. Yuan Hongyi stood tall, voice righteous. The Grand Tutor says the Cui family has no merit. Then we ask you this. When the imperial son contracted smallpox at 1 year old, the Cui family stayed up night after day nursing him for months. Does that count as merit? Is it worth a marquisate for the legitimate heir? Lu Jipu was completely silenced. Although everyone understood the boy's true parentage, the emperor had acted with perfect propriety. If Lu Jipu exposed it, he would be directly opposing the throne. To say it was worth it meant the rewards were proper. To say it was not worth it was tantamount to cursing the imperial heir. Any answer would be wrong. Yuan Hongyi snorted and flicked his sleeve. Court was dismissed. Lu Jipu remained kneeling on the white jade steps, staring at the empty space before him. There was nothing there, yet he felt a pair of smiling eyes watching him from the distant direction of Fengyi Palace. In Fengyi Palace, Yuan Hongyi sipped tea, beaming. That old fellow Lu the Grand Tutor meddles in everything. Today we have finally shut his mouth. I held little Zhu Ri on the bed. The 2-year-old was learning to speak. His small hands waved as he called out in a childish voice. Father? Father? Yuan Hongyi froze. He called us father. I placed the child into his arms. Father and son share one heart. The bond in the blood cannot be severed no matter the distance. Your Majesty visits him daily. He knows it in his heart. Yuan Hongyi lifted the boy high and hugged him tightly. Truly worthy of being our son, clever indeed. An emperor without an heir leaves the realm unstable. Now this child solves our urgent need and is so intelligent besides. Yuan Hongyi wished he could pour all the missing paternal affection into the boy at once. He did not know that the words father had been drilled into the child by the wet nurse, who made him stare at Yuan Hongyi's portrait for months, waiting only for this perfect moment. Just then, Xuluo approached gracefully with a tea tray. She wore the robes of a 2nd-rank palace maid, yet her waist had been cleverly altered slender enough to be encircled by one hand. As she set down the tray, she deliberately lifted her head. A single tear fell perfectly onto the back of Yuan Hongyi's hand. His gaze went blank. Fan, that was Li Jieyu's old boudoir name. Xuluo bit her lip. The slave's name is Xuluo, a palace maid serving the empress. Yuan Hongyi seized her hand. No, you are Fan, our Fan. I glanced at little Zhu Rei, who was watching with wide, curious eyes. One look at the wet nurse and she understood, stepping forward to take the child. The moment he left their arms, Xuluo lunged, clutching his small hand. Don't take him away, let me look a little longer, just once more. They pressed close. One wept, one comforted like long-separated lovers finally reunited. As they murmured, Yuan Hongyi's hand slid from her shoulder down her waist. Xuluo not only showed no shame, she arched slightly to meet his touch. Yuan Hongyi inhaled the scent of her powder and rouge, thoroughly pleased. He signaled the wet nurse to carry the child away. Once the boy was gone, Yuan Hongyi could restrain himself no longer. He swept Xuluo into his arms. She let out a soft cry. Your Majesty, put this slave down. This is the Empress's Fengyi Palace. How can we do this here? Her mouth protested, but her arms had already circled his neck. Yuan Hongyi looked smug. The realm belongs to us. The Empress is so virtuous. How could she blame us? I smiled and rose. Your Majesty speaks truly. There are still accumulated memorials in the Imperial study. This consort will not disturb your Majesty's elegant mood any longer. Behind me came Shuluo's half-refusing, half-inviting moans. Zhuqing followed, stamping her foot in fury. Empress, that is your own bedchamber. Shuluo is clearly doing this on purpose. Of course it is on purpose. I closed my cloak. We went to such lengths to bring her back. Was it so she could serve as a palace maid for this palace? With her looks and her methods, it would be a pity if she did not stir the entire harem. Zhuqing opened her mouth again, but I raised a hand to stop her. Yuan Hongyi had been neglected by the late emperor for half his life. Now that he sat on the throne, naturally he wanted to claim even the late emperor's women to feel complete victory. This desire for conquest worked better than any aphrodisiac. Besides, if he were not drowning in feminine charms, how would those memorials in the Imperial study have fallen volume after volume into my hands? In the Imperial study, vermilion brush in hand, the first memorial was from Chen Yanshan. Among the 4 regent grand ministers he was the least conspicuous assistant grand secretary, and concurrently left vice minister of the Ministry of Revenue, neither high nor low. He belonged to the new faction promoted by the late emperor in his final years, advocating land surveys and tax reform, thereby offending the old faction led by Lu Zhipu. With the late emperor gone, he had lost his protector and was suppressed everywhere. Behind me, the Kui faction has already declined. In court there is no one I can use. Winning him over will be my greatest future asset. The memorial was detailed. This year's Jiangnan harvest was poor. The court should verify local officials' reports. Appended was a list of newly appointed Salt Patrol commissioners from the Ministry of Revenue. Not one word named Lu Zhipu, yet every character pointed at him. The poor harvest was pretext. The real crime was that Lu Zhipu's disciples had used the famine to embezzle wealth. Every name on that list belonged to a disciple of the Lu clan. I annotated a single character approved and set it aside. Lu Zhipu had dominated the court for over 20 years. His disciples and connections filled the 6 ministries. With the little power I currently held, a direct confrontation gave me less than a 20% chance of victory. What emperors throughout history hated most was not corrupt officials, but those who, having rendered great service, overstepped without knowing when to retreat. Lu Zhipu fit both categories perfectly. Therefore, I did not need to collect this debt myself. I only needed to open the account books and place them before Yuan Hongyi so he could see for himself, sever the opponent's arm, and plant my own people. I did not seek victory in one step. I only sought that every step I took would not be wasted. Shuluo was truly a creature born to bewitch men. Her tricks never ceased one after another. Several times, even from the main hall, came the sound of whips and a woman's sobs that were half cry, half invitation, making the night duty maids blush to their ears. Yuan Hongyi was bewitched beyond reason. Even the Hu girl he once favored most was cast aside. Every night he stayed only in Schloss chambers. Sometimes I could not help sighing. The affairs of this world are probably truly fated. The women of the harem drank tonic after tonic and prayed to Buddha after Buddha, yet their bellies remained still. Shuluo became pregnant the very first time. That night Yuan Hongyi came to Fengyi Palace and spoke directly. Shuluo is once again carrying our child. How can she remain a nameless palace maid? We must grant her a proper title. I offered him tea with a smile. Your Majesty is correct. How can the mother of an imperial prince be a slave without name or status? He took the cup, overjoyed. My love, we knew it. You understand our heart best. I sat close beside him, voice gentle. When we arranged Shuluo's identity earlier, this consort feared drawing attention and used a side branch of my mother's family register. By that calculation, she is now my cousin by marriage. Enfeoffing her as noble consort is only proper. The censors outside cannot say Your Majesty refuses to enfeoff even his own cousin. He froze, eyes brimming with emotion. My love, it was truly difficult for you to think of all this for us. I gently fanned him, lips curved. Husband and wife are one heart. If this consort does not think for Your Majesty, who will? It is only that enfeoffing a consort is a major matter, and cannot be handled carelessly. Why not let the Ministry of Rites first draft the edict, prepare the ceremonial regalia and investiture decree, and wait until everything is properly arranged before proceeding? Yuan Hongyi nodded repeatedly. As expected, you think of everything. Do it this way. Drafting the edict and preparing the regalia will take at least 1 or 2 months. In that time, many things can happen. When news of the noble consort's enfeoffment spread, countless teacups shattered in the harem. But I deliberately shielded everything. Word spread both openly and in whispers. Any woman capable of bearing an imperial prince, this palace would personally petition for her enfeoffment. In this harem's sky, when this palace says it is sunny, there will be no clouds. Yet the outer court was already in turmoil. The matter of Suluo had been known only to a few old foxes in the harem. Everyone tacitly understood and stayed silent. Now it was being loudly broadcast, and even the most upright censor learned of it. One dawn, Censor Du publicly questioned in court. The second-rank palace maid Shuluo beside the empress is in reality Sunshi, the Lijeyu of the late emperor. The father takes a concubine, the son inherits her. This violates all human relations and moral order. Your Majesty, as the Son of Heaven, commits such bestial acts. This is not the conduct of a wise ruler. This minister begs your Majesty to immediately grant Shuluo 3 feet of white silk to rectify the eyes and ears of all under heaven. Yuan Hongyi's lips trembled for a long time. He absolutely refused to admit anything. Du Xing, you are truly presumptuous. What Li Jieyu of the late emperor? She is merely a distant cousin of the empress. We see that you are old and confused. Men drag him out. Censor Du showed no fear. He raised his voice higher. This minister's eyes are not blind. My heart is clear as a mirror. Your Majesty may kill this minister easily today, but you cannot kill the tongues of all under heaven. Before he finished, Censor Du dashed his head against the dragon pillar. Blood splattered across the dragon dais. Yuan Hongyi went limp on the throne in terror. That afternoon he had to be supported down by 2 eunuchs. In the imperial study, memorials lay scattered everywhere. Yuan Hongyi's rage still unspent, he kicked the entire bronze brazier over with 1 foot. What meaning is left in us being emperor? Anyone can trample us. Anyone can force us. Eunuchs and maids outside curled into themselves, none daring to approach this ill-fated moment. I lifted my skirts, stepped over the threshold and walked across the ink-stained floor. Your Majesty has suffered injustice. It is only that this consort cannot understand. Censor Du was an old minister already near death who had long withdrawn from court. Why would he suddenly learn of these matters? Doubt flickered in Yuan Hongyi's eyes. After several moments of silence, he suddenly laughed coldly. We understand now, Lu Jipu, it must be him. Previously, when we wished to reward the Kui family, he obstructed in every way, submitting secret memorials every 3 days claiming the Empress interferes in the inner palace and violates ancestral law. Does he not wish to make us lose face before all under heaven and force us to bow before him? The more he spoke, the angrier he grew. I soothed him gently. The Grand Tutor is a regent Grand Minister appointed by the late Emperor. Perhaps he is merely concerned for state affairs, and does not necessarily intend to make things difficult for your Majesty. But the more I spoke that way, the higher his fury rose. He relies on his status as an old minister of the late emperor, presuming on his age to act superior and restrain us everywhere. Does he think we do not know? The tax silver from Zhongnanhe swallowed 2 million taels and submitted only 1 million to us, then pretended ignorance before us every time. Saying what? This minister is devoted to the country and dares not harbor selfish motives. Does he still expect us to thank him? Your Majesty, calm your anger. Your dragon body is important. The Grand Tutor, he has done enough. He slammed the table so hard I flinched. He seemed to realize his loss of composure, pulled me close, and softened his voice. My love, you are simply too kind-hearted. You always think the best of everyone. What intentions does that Lu Jipu have? We know them all too well. Zhu Qing, standing in the corner, bit her lip until she could endure no more. She dropped to her knees with a thud. This slave begs your Majesty's forgiveness for speaking out of turn. The Empress is benevolent and, considering the Grand Tutor is an old regent minister, protects him everywhere. But the virtuous consort, the daughter of Grand Tutor Lu, enters the palace to pay respects whenever she pleases, and her conduct and protocols everywhere exceed regulations. The Empress has only recently begun to live a little more comfortably, yet she must still endure such grievances. Zhu Qing, silence. I shouted suddenly, voice tight with panic, as if my vital point had been struck. How has this palace taught you? Palace rules are strict. How dare you speak such nonsense here? Zhu Qing's tears streamed down, but she spoke even faster. The Empress is benevolent and forbids this slave from discussing her mistress's faults, yet this slave truly cannot bear to watch the Empress suffer such injustice. She prostrated as if determined to die. Yuan Hongyi's face turned ashen. Excellent. Truly excellent for a Lu Jipu. He struts in the outer court. His daughter acts tyrannically in the harem. His eyes reddened. The more he thought, the angrier he became. With one sweep he shattered the teacup. Does he think we will bow our heads? We absolutely will not indulge him. There are plenty in this world eager to die. One Du Xing dies today, tomorrow there will be others. We want to see whether this realm ultimately belongs to the Yuan clan or the Lu clan. Previously we endured because we were weak. But now, clad in the dragon robe, the 9-5 sovereign whoever uses ancestral rights and laws to pressure us is thrusting their own head onto the blade. He strode straight to Ning'an Palace. With one kick he burst the doors open. Incense smoke curled inside. The virtuous consort reclined on a noble couch, leisurely peeling fruit while palace maids held iced delicacies beside her, the picture of leisure. At the loud crash she startled and dropped the plate. "Ye your majesty." Yuan Hongyi's gaze fell on the 9-tailed golden phoenix hairpin in her hair, a style permitted only to the empress. He laughed coldly. "This 9-tailed phoenix hairpin? Our empress has not even worn it warm, yet you wear it first." The virtuous consort's face went deathly pale. She hurriedly removed the hairpin. This consort merely found it novel and acted foolishly for a moment. "I beg your majesty's forgiveness." Yuan Hongyi took a step forward. "Your father presumes on his age to act superior. In the harem you dare exceed protocol and act recklessly. Does the Lu clan truly regard us as a puppet?" He drew the guard's saber and pointed it directly at her hairbun. Strands of pearls and jade clattered to the floor. Virtuous consort Lu failed to observe palace rules and exceeded ritual protocol. She is immediately demoted to palace woman and confined to Lengxiang Pavilion to reflect behind closed doors. The virtuous consort's eyes reddened. Facing his fury, she instead retorted, "Your Majesty, how heartless." This consort merely saw it was beautiful and wore it. Whatever the inner palace service delivered, this consort wore. How is it this consort's own demand? The more she spoke, the more aggrieved she became. She raised her tear-streaked face. "What good things has this consort not seen at home? The hairpins on my father's lesser concubines are larger than this one. If your majesty finds this consort displeasing, just say so. Later, when my father asks, this consort will not know how to explain on your majesty's behalf." Yuan Hongyi's face darkened further. 3 years in the palace and you still speak these same words. How were you treated at home? How is your father? At first he answered patiently a few times. Later, thoroughly annoyed, he simply stopped visiting. Now even at this moment she still used the Lu clan to pressure him. "Lu Jipu, do you truly think we do not dare touch you?" Hearing his voice soften, the virtuous consort gained confidence. "This consort speaks only the truth. My father has watched over the realm for your majesty for so long, if not for merit, then for hard labor. If your majesty demotes his daughter over a single hairpin, it will chill the hearts of the old ministers when word spreads." Yuan Hongyi laughed instead of growing angry. "According to you, without Lu Jipu our realm would not have been secure?" The virtuous consort pouted. "Not necessarily." No sooner had the words left her mouth than a powerful kick struck her chest. She flew backward. "Even on the day we married, you stood outside Qingyi Palace telling the clan elders that we and the empress were a broken pot matched with a cracked lid. Did you think we did not know? Entering the palace made you feel wronged? Is our imperial palace inferior to your Lu residence? Or in your eyes is the dragon throne we sit upon less comfortable than the grand tutor's chair your father occupies?" The virtuous consort screamed in pain, crawling backward while shrieking. "Ah, you dare touch me? You are an ungrateful, faithless ruler. My father will not spare you." Yuan Hongyi was completely enraged. The blade pointed straight at the woman struggling on the floor. "Excellent, truly excellent. Today we shall kill a wretch who does not know life from death like you, and what can that old man do to us?" The virtuous consort, terrified out of her wits, screamed as she rolled and crawled toward the doors. "Help! Your majesty has gone mad, he wants to kill me." The guards and maids in the hall were too frightened to breathe, kneeling and trembling. In the chaos the virtuous consort tripped over the threshold and fell sprawling outside Ning'an Palace. Yuan Hongyi's steps quickened. His saber cleaved the wind, slashing straight down at Consort Lu. "Your Majesty, you must not." At the final instant I threw myself forward with all my strength, both hands seizing the blade. The edge sliced deep into my palms, fresh blood sprayed everywhere. Enduring the heart-piercing pain, I pleaded desperately, "If your Majesty spills blood in the inner palace today, tomorrow the censor's brushes will brand your Majesty a tyrant who slays his own consort. This action of your Majesty, is it not exactly what that family desires?" Yuan Hongyi stared fixedly at the virtuous consort cowering on the ground. After a long time the raised blade finally lowered. "If not for the Empress risking her life to stop us today, we would absolutely not have let you leave Ning'an Palace alive. Get to Lengxiang Pavilion immediately and reflect on yourself. Dare take half a step outside and we will have the entire Lu clan buried with you." The virtuous consort, granted a last-minute reprieve, rolled and crawled out of the hall in a desperate escape, not a trace of her former arrogance remaining. In Fengyi Palace, the imperial physician trembled as he knelt to one side, treating the wounds. Yuan Hongyi paced anxiously. When he saw the torn flesh on my hands, the words of rebuke he had been about to utter died in his throat. My love, why did you stop us just now? If you had not come, we would have already cut down that disloyal, lawless woman. After everything we have given her, she still dared to act so arrogantly. The medicinal powder sprinkled onto raw flesh felt like countless needles stabbing at once. I clenched my teeth against the pain and lifted my head to look at him. If your majesty had truly cut her down, it would have been nothing. But what then? Tomorrow Lu Jipu would kneel in the Golden Hall weeping for his daughter. His old disciples and connections throughout the court would submit memorials in unison, accusing your majesty of tyranny, of doting on a demonic empress, of wantonly slaughtering the innocent. At that point, would your majesty cut down every single person who dared to remonstrate before the entire court? Yuan Hongyi struck his forehead in frustration. This is not allowed. That is not allowed. Then what is the point of us being emperor? After ascending the throne, he had not shown this side of himself for a long time. Back in Qingyi Palace when he was bullied, he had been exactly like this, smashing things and then cursing. What is the point of me being a prince? He had thought that once he sat on the dragon throne, no one under heaven could force him to endure anymore. Yet today everything was reminding him that he still had to endure. He could not cut down a consort, he could not touch an old minister. He could not even smash things to vent his anger without doing it behind closed doors in the inner palace. Once the physician finished bandaging my hands, I waved him away. Only then did I speak. Your Majesty, think about it. When a towering tree stands tall, how do you make it fall? It is too deep-rooted and difficult to chop down, so you must start with the branches. Cut one branch today, cut another tomorrow. Cutting causes no pain. By the time it realizes what is happening, it will be stripped bare, not a single leaf left. Only then do you strike at the roots. It will not even have the strength to cry out. He understood the meaning in my words and pouted. Easy to say. Those people at court, every single one of them, is more skilled than the last at accepting benefits. When it truly comes to confronting the Lu clan, they all turn into cowards. Who do we have left to cut Lu Jipu's branches? I dipped my fingertip into the tea in my cup and wrote 2 characters on the table. Kui. The honor and disgrace of the Kui family are tied to your Majesty's empire by a single thread. They may not be the cleverest, but they are the people under heaven least likely to betray your Majesty. Let the Cui clan go and clash with the Lu clan. Today they fight for one post, tomorrow they seize another position. When both sides have exhausted each other, only then will it be easy for the outsider to step in and close the net. This move was a dangerous one. If we won, the Kui family would rise to the heavens in a single step. My position as empress would be as solid as bedrock. If we lost, with Lu Jipu's methods, he would uproot every blade of grass and drag me down from the phoenix throne along with them. Once this stratagem was used, it meant placing the entire Cui clan onto the fire to roast. Yuan Hongyi was deeply moved. That very night, he secretly summoned my father and elder brother into the palace. I sat by the window and took out the memorial from Chen Yanshun that had been set aside earlier. Intelligent people do not need many words. One bright stove placed openly in the sun to cook, flames roaring and oil boiling, drawing all of the Lu clan's firepower. One dark stove hidden away to cook slowly, silent and unseen, waiting for the moment to pull the firewood from beneath the pot. With these 2 stoves, how could we fail to cook the raw rice that was Lu Jipu's current situation? The death of Tensor Du changed nothing. The title of noble consort was still bestowed upon Xu Luo. With her belly not yet showing, she moved into Yonghe Palace in grand style. The Kui family's title leapt from Marquise of Xianzhen all the way to Duke Kui. My elder brother was also appointed as a Grand Secretariat consultant, granted the right to submit secret memorials. The first secret memorial my father submitted contained only 1 line. This minister devotes his entire heart to repaying your Majesty's heavenly grace. The fewer the words, the firmer the matter. After court, someone approached Lu Jipu to probe his attitude. He only replied indifferently. His Majesty's will. This minister and the others will respectfully carry it out. I knew he was not without pain. He was simply waiting for the Cui family to reveal a weakness. Corruption, arrogance, forming cliques and factions. Even the smallest matter, he could follow the thread and dig up an entire rope. But the Kui family was like a pool of dead water, not a single ripple. The Kui family was not large. My father had spent decades navigating the officialdom, neither meritorious nor guilty. When others took bribes, he stood still. When others committed crimes, he remained untouched. Colleagues at court, when asked about him, thought for a long time before finally saying, Lord Kui. An honest man. My elder brother had passed the imperial examinations and conducted himself prudently. When others formed factions, he avoided them. When others sent gifts seeking favor, he declined. By this generation, the family was sparse, old and young alike, not even one person capable of shouldering heavy responsibility. The Liu clan exhausted every effort investigating back and forth, and in the end only discovered one thing. The newly granted mansion of Duke Kui had gate pillars 3 inches taller than regulations allowed. 3 inches, merely the length of a finger, yet, once placed on the scales, it became ironclad evidence that the Empress's maternal family had violated ritual protocol. That very night, my father's memorial requesting punishment was submitted. This minister has governed without strictness, and cannot serve as a model for all officials under heaven. I beg your majesty to punish me. In the imperial study, Yuan Hongyi threw the memorial onto the table and paced. 3 inches? Is that even worth weighing? The mansion we granted, do they dare criticize the height of its gate pillars? I lifted my head from the desk. This consort actually sees this as a good opportunity. What good opportunity? Gate pillars exceeding regulations, serious if you call it serious, minor if you call it minor. But if your majesty lightly lets it pass today, then tomorrow when Lu Jipu's disciples embezzle relief silver or seize school fields, will your majesty still punish them? Today your majesty punishes the Kui family over 3 inches of gate pillars. Tomorrow when the Liu clan commits a crime, they will have no face left to beg for leniency. 1 bowl of water carried level, no one can find fault. Therefore your majesty must not only punish, but punish heavily. He hesitated. If the punishment is too heavy, we fear Duke Cui cannot endure it. I remained perfectly calm. My father has always been moderate. Whether in court or in the countryside, it makes no difference to him. This consort is the Empress. If I can share your majesty's burdens and solve your difficulties, I would willingly climb a mountain of blades. Before I finished speaking, he suddenly pulled me into his arms. My love, marrying you is the greatest blessing of our entire life. I gently patted his back. In that moment, one embrace was worth 1,000 words. In less than a month, Duke Kui, once so illustrious, was successively reprimanded and had his salary cut. Finally, on the charge of governing without strictness and failing to live up to heavenly grace, he was stripped of every position and ordered to immediately leave the capital and return to his ancestral home to reflect behind closed doors. From Duke Sui to dismiss before and after a little over 2 months, he had risen in a blaze of glory and fallen in silence. The court discussed it for several days, then no one mentioned it again. Lu Jipu was no fool. Upon returning to his residence, he summoned his disciples and repeatedly warned them, absolutely do not show your heads and give others a handle to grasp. His disciples all answered respectfully. 1 month passed. 3 months passed. Half a year later, even noble consort Ji had given birth to a little princess. Court affairs continued as usual. Yuan Hongyi no longer mentioned the Cui family, nor did he target the Liu clan again. Seeing the court calm, the people below gradually relaxed their vigilance. On the day of the little princess's full-month celebration, Yonghe Palace was decorated with lanterns and flowers in dazzling splendor. Noble consort Ji, her hair adorned with pearls and jade, was surrounded by a crowd of concubines and noble ladies, smiling until her eyes curved into crescents. I sat in the seat of honor, dressed plainly, quietly sipping tea. Over the years I had always been like this. When I was still a princess consort, we had been poor and had never hosted banquets. Even after becoming empress, I had not changed. Outside, rumors spread that the Empress was unskilled at conversation, timid by nature, someone who could never rise to prominence. Most of the noble ladies present today had ties to the Liu clan. They sat below, outwardly here to congratulate, but in truth each carried a mission to befriend noble consort Ji. A few coquettish words on the pillow, a few complaints, and she could decide the rise or fall, glory or disgrace, of an entire family. Noble consort Ji was pretty and bold. On the surface, my maternal family is the Ji clan, but in reality my mother's family is the Sun clan. Because of me they have all risen, one person achieves the Tao, and even chickens and dogs ascend to heaven. Even my brother, who cannot read a single character, was appointed as a local military advisor. The wife of the Vice Minister of War presented a set of the 4 books and 5 classics, saying it was to enlighten the little princess. When the bookbox was opened, inside were neatly stacked gold leaves. She smiled warmly. Within books there are houses of gold. This is but a small token from this minister's wife. The others crowded forward as well, presenting gifts of every kind, displaying luxury to the utmost. Noble consort Ji thanked each in turn, outwardly modest, yet the pride in her eyes could not be hidden. I sat to one side and added only a pair of gold locks as my congratulatory gift. Noble consort Ji flicked the gold locks lightly with one hand and smiled brightly at me. As expected of the Empress, whatever you gift is always elegant. She lowered her head to play with the child in her arms, then suddenly sighed. This child cries and fusses every night. This consort has not slept a full night in 3 days. You have even lost weight. Unlike the Empress, who does not have to endure the pain of childbirth. That is also a blessing. Those words were no different from slapping me across the face in front of all the guests. Zhu Rui had been raised under my name and was publicly called the legitimate son, yet everyone knew noble consort Ji was his true birth mother. The corner of my mouth twitched, somewhat stiff. Younger sister speaks correctly. This palace has thin blessings. I truly do not have the fortune you possess. The noble ladies exchanged glances. The wife of the Vice Minister of War spoke first. Noble consort Ji has given birth to a princess great merit, and is deeply favored by His Majesty. She is the one who truly possesses fortune. Some people occupy a title yet are nothing but an empty shell, beautiful to look at but useless. The wife of the Minister of Rights continued, Indeed, noble consort Ji is still young and fertile. In the future she will bear several more imperial princes. That is the true blessing of the realm. Some people sit in that position, yet whether they can keep it is still uncertain. Several ladies surrounding noble consort Ji laughed and chimed in. The forced smile at the corner of my mouth could no longer be maintained. I rose. This palace is somewhat tired. Please continue enjoying yourselves. Behind me came unrestrained laughter. I did not turn back. Laugh all you want. When you have laughed enough, it will be my turn to perform in this play. The full-month banquet for the little princess lasted 3 full days. Congratulations continued arriving for more than 10 days and had still not been fully inventoried. Even a county magistrate from the most remote region had eagerly presented a flawless white jade guanyin statue, saying it was to pray for blessings for the little princess. Noble consort Ji accepted every gift without refusal. Then she would go whisper a few words into Yuan Hongzi's ear. Whoever presents the most generous gift is the most loyal. Upon hearing this, Yuan Hongyi would wave his hand, and several imperial edicts would descend, bestowing lucrative positions upon those people. For a time, Yonghe Palace was as bustling as a marketplace. Noble ladies entered the palace to pay respects 2 or 3 times a day, wishing they could worship her like a deity. I pretended not to hear. Every day I simply stayed behind closed doors, approving every memorial that needed approving, receiving whoever needed to be received. I did not interfere in anything else. When the fire is not yet large enough, the person adding firewood is the most noticeable. What I was waiting for was for that pot of water to boil on its own. The old year was about to end. Snow fell again. The plum branches in the courtyard were covered in white. Zhu Rui, bundled thickly, staggered about building a snowman in the yard. The wet nurse stood to one side watching nervously, wanting to help yet not daring to, so anxious she kept rubbing her hands. When Yuan Hongyi arrived, his brows carried a trace of gloom. Seeing Zhu Rui trying to roll a snowball, his frown eased. In the mood to play, he scooped up a handful of snow and gently tossed it at Zhu Rui's feet. The little boy, startled, turned and upon seeing him, let out a delighted cry and ran over. Yuan Hongyi lifted him with one arm and brushed the snow from his body. Inside the room a copper pot had just been set to boil, white steam rising hazily. Zhu Rui toddled around the table while the wet nurse chased after him with a bowl of minced meat porridge. Panting heavily, Yuan Hongyi pulled the boy into his lap and pinched his nose teasingly. Look at you, running back and forth like a little monkey. I stood to one side, dipping food for him. Watching the father and son playing together so happily, I could not help but smile. Such moments were rare. At night he mostly slept at noble consort Ji's place. During the day when he came to Fengyi Palace it was usually for court matters. After lunch, Zhu Rui was carried away by the wet nurse for his nap. The snow outside had not stopped. Yuan Hongyi was too lazy to move about and simply removed his heavy socks and lay down on the couch. I poured him a cup of warm wine and sat close beside him. Does your majesty have something on your mind today? When you first entered, your brows were already furrowed. He downed the cup in one gulp, thoroughly annoyed. Who else but those old ministers? The new year has barely begun and they are already coming to cry poverty to us. It is maddening. Only your place is comfortable. No need to look at those ghostly scribbles. No need to listen to their wailing. I smiled. Whatever they say, your majesty need not take it all to heart. Take the Ministry of Revenue, for example. They cry poor every day, but where exactly are they poor? How much silver is short? None of them ever says clearly. He snorted. Is that not the truth? Every time we ask, they drag out a pile of numbers and go in circles. Listening to them makes our head spin. I followed smoothly. This consort has recently seen something and has not yet decided what to do. Would your majesty like to take a look while you are free? I took the memorial from Zhu Qing's hands and placed it beside him. Originally, this consort thought the Grand Tutor has been well behaved lately, and there was no need to trouble your majesty with it. But over the past half year, the people under him have grown increasingly reckless. This consort thought it would be good for your majesty to know. He set down his wine cup and casually opened the memorial. The document detailed how a distant branch of the Liu clan had just built a 5-room courtyard where even the servants' quarters used top-grade silver thread charcoal. During the new year, the palace had only slaughtered 50 pigs, yet this single Liu branch alone had consumed 40 crates of bird's nest soup and sea cucumbers packed in sacks. The porters at the dock had carried them for 2 full days. The memorial also noted that the New Year's money given to the youngest child in that branch alone amounted to a full 10,000 taels. I presented a second memorial. This one concerned a disciple of the Liu clan who had built a mansion in his hometown. His official rank was only 7th grade. Yet the regulations he followed were those of a first-grade official, and not a single person in the ministry had submitted a memorial about it. The third memorial was even more direct. Before the new year, Liu Jipu's grandson had married. The top of the bridal sedan used golden brocade that only the imperial family was permitted to use. The sedan poles were wrapped in gold leaf, stretching from Zouk Street all the way to Wenchong Gate. The specifications no different from a prince's wedding. Excellent, truly excellent. He threw the memorials onto the floor. Our national treasury cries empty every year. Our Ministry of Revenue cries poor every day. And the result? Just one branch of the Liu clan spent more during the new year than it would cost us to repair half of the Yangding River. A 7th-grade official builds a mansion according to first-grade regulations, and not a single person in the ministry submits a memorial. Where are the censors? Every day they remonstrate about this and that. When it comes to the Liu clan, they all go mute. Still not satisfied, he stood up and stomped on the memorials several times. Snakes and rats in the same nest, all a pack of parasites plotting to steal our empire. I bent down and picked up the memorials. Your Majesty, calm your anger. The day my father received the edict to leave the capital, it was precisely to investigate on your Majesty's behalf. The Liu clan is deeply rooted and difficult to shake. If this continues, forgive this consort for speaking a great disrespect. Will your Majesty's dragon throne still sit securely? Over the past half year, I had occasionally had people below leak small pieces of information to him. He recalled that last month the Vice Minister of Works had submitted a memorial requesting retirement. He had just approved it. The very next day, Liu Jipu had used one of his disciples to fill the vacancy. Before the new year, the Ministry of Rights had cried poor and requested to reduce Lantern Festival expenses. He had agreed, only to hear afterward that the Liu clan had spent a full 30,000 taels renovating their ancestral hall in the countryside. And today's memorials, 10,000 taels in New Year's money, a golden sedan, a 5-room courtyard with silver thread charcoal. He ground his teeth until his jaw felt as if it would crack. Yuan Hongyi was not a wise and martial emperor. He loved pleasure, was soft-eared, and sometimes foolish enough to make one sweat on his behalf. But from ancient times, no emperor could tolerate real power trampling over his own head. He wanted to investigate. Of course, I would stuff all the evidence intact into his hands. Only 3 days later, at the next morning court, he no longer lounged lazily on the throne as before. Instead, he directly ordered Gao Jiuliang to read the memorial aloud before the entire court. The memorial listed a string of names, from 8th-grade county magistrates to 4th-grade junior ministers, accused of corruption, violating regulations, dereliction of duty, and allowing servants to commit violence. Attached were times, locations, witnesses, and physical evidence, every single item nailed down solidly. These people were scattered everywhere, yet they all shared one common trait. They were either disciples of Liu Jipu or had close family ties to him. Liu Jipu kept his eyes on his nose and his nose on his heart, saying nothing. His subordinates below erupted in protest. Your Majesty, although these officials have faults, their crimes do not warrant this. This minister believes the matter involves too many people and should be handed to the 3 judicial offices for joint trial. It cannot be handled lightly. These are all court officials. If they are all convicted at once, it will chill the hearts of scholars throughout the land. Yuan Hongyi's face darkened. Just now someone said their crimes do not warrant this. Then we asked you all previously when Duke Kui's gate pillars were 3 inches too tall. Every one of you spoke so We followed your wishes and dismissed him, sending him back to his ancestral home. Why now, when these people commit crimes, do you say their crimes do not warrant punishment? Grand Tutor Lu, what do you say? Called by name, Lu Zhipu took a deep breath. Your Majesties will— This minister has no objections. Yuan Hongyi clapped his hands. Good. Since the Grand Tutor also thinks this way, then do as you say. These people will be dealt with according to the law. No further discussion. That very day 7 people were convicted, 2 of them sentenced to beheading. After court, people came in droves to Lu Zhipu's residence to plead for mercy. Lu Zhipu received guests every day until late at night, yet he still could not stop his disciples from being successively dismissed and imprisoned. At first he thought he only needed to put up a fight, give a little, let the machine become inoperable, and then have someone below submit a memorial explaining the situation. Naturally the matter would be reduced from major to minor. But this time every person dismissed was immediately replaced by someone new. The replacements were younger, more obedient. Only then did he realize this was not a momentary impulse of the emperor, but someone standing behind him who had been sharpening his blade for an entire year. He had dominated the officialdom his entire life, only to lose in the end to his own arrogance. He had thought the Kuei family being dismissed meant they had admitted defeat. Yuan Hongyi was incompetent and lost in wine and women, but he had forgotten that even the largest umbrella, no matter how deep its roots, still fears the axe. He sighed, looked at the splendor filling his home, clenched his teeth, and submitted a memorial requesting retirement. In the imperial study, while Yuan Hongyi personally annotated the memorial, I stood beside him grinding ink, watching him approve each document with a pleased expression. My love, that old vice minister of justice, previously he used to act arrogant in front of us. These past few days when he sees us he is even more respectful than when meeting his own father. Every word you taught us, we have used. We spoke until he was speechless and his face turned green. I smiled and handed him another memorial. Your Majesty, look at this one as well. Regarding the vacancy of the Jiangnan Textile Commissioner, this consort has selected several candidates. All of them have been suppressed by the Lu clan over the years and could not rise. He took it, glanced through it a few times, and approved everyone with a flourish of the brush. As people of the Lu clan were pulled down, my people were gradually promoted to fill the gaps. The Grand Tutor has already submitted his memorial requesting retirement. How does your Majesty intend to arrange for him? Yuan Hongyi thought for a moment. After all, he is an old minister left behind by our father. He is also advanced in age. We intend to grant him a leisurely title in the capital to spend his remaining years in retirement, no longer involved in court affairs. We will have some peace as well. I nodded with a smile. Your Majesty is benevolent. The Grand Tutor has labored hard and rendered great service. To be pitied and cherished by your Majesty in this way is also his good fortune. After a pause I continued, the virtuous consort Lu has been reflecting in Lengxiang Pavilion for some time now. Since your Majesty wishes to preserve face for the Lu clan, why not take the opportunity to visit her, restore her position, and also set the old minister's mind at ease? He pondered for a moment, eyes brightening. You speak sensibly. Strike with the rod, then offer a sweet date. We do not wish to exterminate them completely. He set down his brush and rotated his wrist. The remaining memorials, you approve them. We will go to Lengxiang Pavilion now to bring the virtuous consort back. I smiled and rose, straightening his collar and seeing him to the door. His steps carried a trace of lightness, thinking he was delivering the final sweet date to the Lu clan. From then on both sides would be peaceful, harmonious and perfect, but he did not know that Madame Lu, loving her daughter, had over the past year sent large sums of silver into Lengxiang Pavilion one after another. The people below worked faster than rabbits. Not only were the allowances of a demoted consort fully provided, even the expenses of my own Fengyi palace were never lacking. In fact, they were even better. In a little while when he arrived, he would personally witness how foolish he had been for an entire year, thinking himself wise and brilliant, yet in reality being ridden like a horse and bled dry. In that moment he would completely understand. As long as the Lu clan had not fallen, even without attending court, they could still earn enormous sums of silver from elsewhere. And he, this emperor, in their eyes was nothing more than a fool easily deceived. Lengxiang Pavilion lay at the northernmost end of the imperial palace, never seeing sunlight all year round. From the outside it looked dilapidated and desolate. Yuan Hongyi stood tall, refusing to have his arrival announced. After being tormented for so long, when Lady of Talent Lu saw him she would surely weep and repent. At that time, when he restored her position as virtuous consort, would she not be moved to tears of gratitude? The corner of his mouth carried a faint smile as he stepped inside, and his entire body froze. Inside and outside the door were two different worlds. The courtyard was paved with jade bricks shipped from Suzhou. In the yard hung shoe brocade curtains. The windows that once let in drafts had all been replaced with colorful glazed glass. This material was imported. Even the inner treasury did not have much of it. Yet here it was as embedded in every window as if it cost nothing. Through the glazed glass he saw Attendant Lu reclining on a noble consort's couch. Two handsome young eunuchs attended her, one fanning, one peeling grapes for her. Two more knelt on the floor, one speaking, one laughing, telling jokes to amuse her. "My lady, your life is happier than an immortal's." Attendant Lu lazily opened her mouth, chewed twice, then spat the grape seed into the palm of one of the men. "What is so strange about that? When I was at home it was 100 times more enjoyable. If not for His Majesty insisting on selecting me into the palace, this imperial harem, even a dog would not want to come. It is far inferior to my home," she sighed, voice full of nostalgia. "When I was at home, my father even brought talented scholars to the residence for me to choose from behind the window. Whoever I favored, my father would promote him. The moment those men heard they had been promoted, they would kneel before me like dogs, wishing they could lick my shoes. It was truly amusing." The young eunuchs flattered her with laughter. "Attendant Lu speaks truly. Those poor scholars who pass the examinations are not even worthy of carrying your shoes. Indeed, to be noticed by Attendant Lu, a golden branch and jade leaf is already their great fortune." Attendant Lu, thoroughly pleased by the flattery, suddenly scooped up a handful of gold melon seeds from the table and scattered them on the floor. "Reward for all of you." The young eunuchs immediately prostrated themselves, scrambling and pushing, fighting to pick them up. Attendant Lu leaned back on the couch watching the chaos at her feet, laughing, until she rocked back and forth. "To be honest, life in Lungxiang Pavilion is passable, but you lot are only here to relieve my boredom. Another day I will have my mother send in a few young officials. At night they can fan me. Now that would be true comfort." One of the young eunuchs was about to reply when he suddenly glanced outside the window, and his face turned deathly pale. Attendant Lu followed his gaze. Through the glazed window she saw Yuan Hongyi standing in the twilight, his expression unreadable. She did not know that the performance she had just given had become the final straw that broke the relationship between ruler and minister. From this day forward, the Lu clan would no longer have any chance of survival. That very night, the imperial guards silently surrounded the Lu residence. Red flames illuminated half the capital. By dawn the news had spread through every alley. The once illustrious Lu clan had completely collapsed. The confiscation of property lasted a full 10 days. Gold, silver, and jewels from hidden cellars were carried out in load after load, stretching half a street long. Every account book clearly recorded the kickbacks Lu Jipu had taken while managing the salt monopoly, and the bribes from officials across the provinces. When Lu Jipu was led out of his residence in chains, the hair at his temples had already turned white. He suddenly threw his head back and laughed loudly. "Half of this great Liang Empire was shouldered by us, the Lu clan. Late Emperor, you handed the empire to an ungrateful wretch who dotes on a demonic empress like this." Before he finished speaking, the slap of the Imperial Guard commander struck across his face. Lu Jipu staggered 2 steps, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth, yet he continued laughing until tears streamed down his face. When the news reached the imperial study, Yuan Hongyi was so enraged he smashed a teacup. "Half the empire? We see that he stole half the empire. That is the truth. Our silver, our empire. He stole it for half a lifetime and now it has become his." He kicked the broken porcelain shards across the floor and pushed a blank imperial edict toward me. "My love, draft the edict. The Lu clan exile the entire family to the south to become slaves for the border troops. For life with no possibility of redemption." He dared to say he shouldered half the empire? "We will let him shoulder stones for the rest of his life. And that Lu woman, did she not enjoy being surrounded by talented men? Send her to a brothel. For life, never allowed to come ashore. We will let her be surrounded by men every single day until she dies." On the day the Lu clan left the capital, it happened to coincide with the Cui family's carriages entering the city. On one side were the heavy prisoner carts. On the other, light and steady carriages. Everyone knew the wind in the capital had changed direction. The 2 regent grand ministers who had once followed Lu Jipu now entered court trembling, wishing they could hide behind pillars. Whatever Yuan Hongji asked they answered fearfully, terrified that a single wrong word would lead to the same fate as Lu Jipu. With no one left to restrain him, Yuan Hongyi was like a wild horse freed from its reins, joyfully throwing himself into the sea of feminine charms he had always longed for. Nuhu girls offered as tribute, Beauties in silk and gauze officials from every region catered to his preferences. Peerless beauties flowed into the palace like water. The women of the harem lined up waiting for favor. He no longer had time to care about court assemblies or memorials. One day drunk, he lounged on the couch in Fungi Palace with his two most favored beauties, one in gauze, attending him on either side. I brought several important memorials before him. Your Majesty, these matters are urgent. This consort does not dare decide alone. Please review them. He yawned and pushed the memorials aside. The realm is at peace. With you, our virtuous and capable wife, handling internal affairs, what is there to worry about? You just review and decide as you see fit. I felt somewhat awkward. Now your Majesty does not even wish to hear this consort present the memorials. Tomorrow when the great ministers argue, how will this consort know how to answer on your Majesty's behalf? He clicked his tongue in annoyance and turned over. That bunch of old faces, just looking at them annoys us. Why not? He suddenly sat up and looked into my eyes. Why not let you attend court in our stead? I froze for a moment, then shook my head. Your Majesty jests. This consort is merely a woman of the inner palace. Even reviewing memorials for you is already overstepping ritual. How could I attend court? What is there to fear? He sat up, the alcohol rising. When the founding emperor and empress attended court together, they were called the two sages ruling side by side. You are our little ruler. What is wrong with attending court? He waved his hand impatiently. Very well, we are busy. Tomorrow at morning court, remember to dress properly. We will take you there. I withdrew awkwardly. As I turned, I felt an irrepressible surge of satisfaction rise in my chest. Once this step was taken, nothing ahead could stop me. In the years that followed, I sat behind the curtain and attended court in person. Yuan Hongyi hid in the palace, indulging in fine wine and beautiful women, asking nothing about affairs of state. At first, several old ministers knelt in the Golden Hall and said, "For a woman to attend court has since ancient times been a sign of national ruin. Your Majesty does this, where do you place ancestral institutions?" Yuan Hongyi lounged sideways on the dragon throne, idly rolling two newly acquired jade walnuts in his hand. When the founding emperor and Empress Gao attended court together, they were called the two sages ruling side by side. History records that internally they governed the state, externally they pacified the realm. Since Empress Gao could do it, why can our empress not do it? The old ministers looked at one another. None dared to argue with the founding emperor. Yuan Hongyi set the jade walnuts on the table. Back then when we were in Qingyi Palace and could not even get a cup of hot tea, where were all of you? Our empress and we lived in a leaking house, burning moldy coal. Which of you ever sent a set of clothes or a bowl of hot soup? Once those words were spoken, no one dared add another sentence. All those kneeling remonstrations that ended with blood flowing were, in the end, nothing but the pitiful self-respect of men causing trouble. Memorials could be approved by me. The realm could be decided by me. But as long as I remained in Fungi Palace, they could still pretend the person they knelt before was the emperor. Now that I sat behind the curtain, neither arguing nor explaining, whoever submitted a reasonable memorial, I approved. Whoever proposed an unworkable plan, I rejected. Gradually those stiff-necked old men discovered that the Kui family standing behind me was no longer the midday sun. Even my elder brother remained obediently accumulating experience as vice minister. On the contrary, those who had once been suppressed by the Liu clan, people who truly had talent, rose one by one. I favored the new faction led by Chen Yanshun, sending these young talents into the provinces and counties. During the late emperor's reign, civil officials were valued over military ones. Military officers at court had no voice. I spoke to Yuan Hongyi. In the northwest, the bandits are rampant. The provinces along the Liang Road need military escorts. Relying solely on civil officials to dispatch troops is not stable. At the time he was drinking and enjoying himself with a newly favored courtesan. Without thinking he approved. I never touched the imperial guards. They were the emperor's personal protectors and too easy to draw attention. What I chose were the troops stationed in Jiangnan, Huguang, and Sichuan. After these generals took their posts, their memorials of gratitude arrived, every word filled with thanks. Zhu gradually grew up. I invited the finest tutors to teach him reading and writing. Noble Consort Ji's daughter was 3 years younger than him, and was now 7, a pretty little girl like a doll's, spoiled by Noble Consort Ji to the point of lawlessness. The palace maids in Yonghe Palace changed in batches. All of them had been grabbed by the hair and beaten by her. Whenever she was unhappy, she smashed the treasures in the private treasury to vent her anger. After all, His Majesty only had these 2 children. If she wanted the moon in the sky, would he not give it to her? Although noble consort Ji's favor had waned, because she was the birth mother of the 2 children, aside from me, she remained the most powerful woman in the harem. But ever since I dismissed most of the Sun Clan's positions, she had been displeased and ran to Yuan Hongyi to complain. She had many tricks. On a sweltering summer day, she wore a thin red silk dress and walked with swaying grace. The moment Yuan Hongyi saw her, his bones went soft. When she personally fed him blood wine and her soft, boneless body leaned into his embrace, attending him until his entire body felt comfortable, only then did she begin to weep and accuse. Yuan Hongyi's mood was buoyant. He drank more wine and casually ordered Gao Jiuliang to bring a blank imperial edict. Very well, very well. What great matter has made you cry? Whatever position you want, write it yourself. We are too lazy to lift the brush. Noble consort Ji was truly bold. She directly wrote an edict promoting her father to 2nd-grade official rank with the right to enter the cabinet. When the edict reached the imperial study, I did not even glance at it before rejecting it outright. Originally, I had not paid much attention to her. I even exempted her from paying respects. We had lived in peace without interfering with each other. But this time it enraged her so much she stormed into the imperial study. Empress, the edict was personally approved by His Majesty. On what grounds do you reject it? I lifted my head and looked at her, dressed in splendid attire, pearls and jade everywhere. She seemed to have forgotten that all of this had been granted by me. Since I could give, I could naturally take back. Noble consort Ji, why do you not kneel upon seeing this palace? She reluctantly knelt, eyes filled with defiance. This consort has knelt. Now the Empress must give this consort an explanation. Otherwise this consort will not be easy to talk to today either. I smiled coldly. This palace asks you, when His Majesty approved it, did he know how much silver your Sun Clan had already embezzled while holding those positions? She pouted. The Empress speaks so lightly. Becoming an official. Is it not precisely for the privileges that come with the position? Dare you say that the people sitting in those positions have never once sought benefits for their own families? On what grounds does the Kui family get to eat meat while the Sun Clan cannot even have soup? The more she spoke, the more indignant she became. She raised her head and glared at me. I stood and walked step by step until I stood before her, looking down. On what grounds? On the grounds that this palace sits here. This palace's principles are principles. This palace's rules are rules. I did not let her continue. Do you need this palace to speak more clearly? Over the years, how much silver has the 4th prince and his fief sent you, making you willingly pass every piece of information from the inner palace to the outside? What? You thought you did it so secretly that this palace would not know? She was so terrified she did not dare breathe loudly. All her previous arrogance vanished. Just then the little princess ran in. Seeing her birth mother kneeling on the floor, she rushed toward me and began pounding my leg with her fists. You evil woman! How dare you bully my mother? I will tell father to cut you down and make my mother empress. Zhu Qing and several others hurriedly pulled her away, but she continued struggling, kicking and punching. A chicken that cannot lay eggs, get down. Let my mother become empress. I did not grow angry. I only spoke indifferently. The little princess has not learned proper etiquette. Tomorrow this palace will send 2 strict matrons to Yonghe Palace to personally teach her. When she has learned, then she may step outside Yonghe Palace again. Noble consort Ji still wanted to plead. I took the handkerchief from a palace maid and wiped my hands. Noble consort Ji, today this palace will not punish you. Go back and think carefully, this life of yours and the glory and wealth behind you, who ultimately granted them. The mother and daughter were led away. Zhu Qing brought in freshly brewed tea. Empress, just now the eldest prince also stood outside the door and watched as noble consort Ji and the little princess were sent back. My brush paused for a moment. I know, over the years I had never hidden Zhu Rei's true parentage. In the palace there were many mouths and many rumors. Rather than letting him hear a version embellished by others, it was better to tell him the truth from the beginning. I had not treated him badly. His food, clothing and daily needs followed the standards of the legitimate eldest son. I invited the finest tutors, let him read the most books. Whatever he wanted, I gave him. I had once thought that as long as I treated him well, he would understand that in this inner palace, I was the one who could give him a future and that throne. But today he had gone with his birth mother and still not stepped inside. In my heart I sighed. Not one's own flesh and blood, in the end one can never truly raise them close. When the matter reached Yuan Hongji, he was embracing a newly taken beauty, drinking wine with an indifferent expression. I heard noble consort Ji went to your place to cause trouble. The little princess also got involved. I was peeling an orange for him. Hearing this, I smiled. The princess is a golden branch and jade leaf, representing the dignity of the court. She should learn a few rituals as well, he yawned. You just handle it as you see fit. I placed the orange segment into his mouth. He chewed twice and mumbled, oranges are still sweeter at your place, then turned back to continue entwining with the beauty beside him. Wine and women had drained Yuan Hongyi's body. Just past 40, his steps had already become unsteady. The dark circles under his eyes could no longer be hidden. The imperial physicians repeatedly advised him, but he would not listen. I did not actively persuade him either. Instead, I even opened a garden in the inner palace and raised dozens of deer, so that whenever he wished he could drink fresh deer blood. Whatever he wanted, I gave him. Whatever he craved, I provided. Before the court officials, I had long since changed from a weak empress into an iron-blooded little ruler, ruthless and decisive, my word law. But in front of Yuan Hongyi, I remained forever the person who had walked with him from Qingyi Palace to this day, wholeheartedly sharing his burdens and solving his difficulties. Without affection, how could we have trusted each other enough to reach today? But the more I loved the power he had given me, the more I always remembered that everything had begun with his indulgence. He had personally pushed me into this position, and I had merely seized the opportunity, climbing step by step along the vines. In the year Zhu Rui turned 17, Yuan Hongyi spent one night with multiple women and the next morning never woke again. The funeral was conducted with great solemnity. White banners filled the sky. The sound of weeping shook the heavens. I resolutely kept vigil for 7 days, crying until my eyes were swollen red. Even several old ministers carrying the coffin could not help shedding tears. On the day of the burial, the entire city wore mourning white. The people knelt on both sides of the road to see him off. They all praised me for my deep affection and righteousness, saying, "With you, great Liang will have blessings for generations to come." I heard those words. On my face was sorrow, in my heart was calm. Yuan Hongyi enjoyed every blessing in this life and exhausted his lifespan. He left without too much pain, that is enough. Zhu Rui ascended the throne as the new emperor, taking the reign title Yonglong. The 17-year-old youth, clad in dragon robes and wearing the imperial crown, sat on that throne with the bearing of an emperor. Yet he was still young after all. Less than 3 days after ascending, he declared in court that he wished to honor his birth mother as Empress Dowager, establishing both eastern and western palaces side by side. The hall erupted in an uproar. Chen Yanshun spoke only one sentence. There is no precedent in the ancestral institutions. Zhu Rui immediately turned hostile on the spot, punishing Chen Yanshun by making him kneel on the jade steps for half a day. The Grand Secretary of the Cabinet, already over 50, had lost all face. Civil and military officials alike witnessed it. Every one of them sighed that the emperor was too young. Not many days later, news reached Fengyi Palace that His Majesty had summoned several newly promoted Hanlin scholars in the imperial study. During the conversation, Rao Lin mentioned a hen crowing at dawn, saying the late emperor had been too indulgent, and that now that the new emperor had ascended, he should return to ancestral institutions. I said nothing. That day at lunch I did not eat a single bite. The people who had followed me for more than 10 years immediately understood. From that day forward, Zhu Rui's imperial edicts could no longer be issued. The Ministry of Revenue said the treasury was insufficient. The Ministry of War said the orders needed further discussion. The Ministry of Personnel said candidates still required evaluation, every reason perfectly legitimate. The young emperor sat in the imperial studies, staring at the imperial seal in a daze for half a day. The foolish child still did not understand even now. The imperial seal was merely a block of stone. What truly made people kneel was the person standing behind it holding it. Memorials piled higher and higher. Zhu Rui could not handle them, yet he also refused to let anyone else handle them. He smashed things in the imperial study and roared at the ministers kneeling all over the floor. "We are the emperor. What we say is final," but what he said did not count. Everyone was waiting for one person who could make decisions. The old ministers who had followed me for more than 10 years successively submitted tablets requesting an audience. When Chen Yanshun arrived, his hair already streaked with white, he knelt on the floor and spoke in a low, urgent voice. "Empress, the state cannot be without a ruler for a single day. His Majesty is young and impulsive. We are powerless. We earnestly beg the Empress to lower the curtain and rule as regent." I helped him up and spoke indifferently. "Wait a little longer. Wait until the 4th Prince's troops arrive. Only then will it be legitimate and proper to clean them out." The advice from back then, noble consort Ji had ultimately not listened. She had thought that over the years my turning a blind eye meant I was afraid of her. She thought the olive branch the 4th Prince extended was genuine support. She did not know that every piece of information carried out of the palace by messengers had to pass through my hands first. She promised the fourth prince half the empire in exchange for 2,000 elite soldiers, agreeing to use fireworks as the signal on the night of the Mid-Autumn Festival for a coordinated attack from inside and outside. That night the moon was perfectly round. The fourth prince's troops had barely reached the city gate during the guard change, when they were blocked by the troops I had prepositioned. Torches lit the scene bright as day. Under a rain of arrows, the 2,000 men did not even create a single ripple. The blood on the corridors was washed clean by the autumn rain that night, leaving no trace. The next morning, palace servants continued sweeping as usual as if nothing had happened. After half a lifetime of scheming, mother and daughter ultimately could not even keep a single intact corpse. Truly pitiful. In the years that followed, I successively supported 2 imperial princes from collateral lines onto the throne. Both children were weaker than the last. They did not even dare breathe loudly when they saw me. The realm was at peace. Auspicious omens appeared one after another. The Yellow River ran clear, a qilin appeared. Even Lingji mushrooms grew on the rafters of the ancestral temple. The director of astronomy dared to say this was the will of heaven gathering. Among the people there was a sage. Civil and military officials knelt across the entire ground, begging me to follow heaven's will. The newly ascended emperor prepared the Edict of Abdication in advance and respectfully requested my instruction. We respectfully invite the Empress Dowager to ascend the throne and bring peace to all under heaven. At the age of 49, I formally ascended the throne as emperor. Those who had once cursed me as a demonic empress now knelt in the front row, heads lowered lowest of all. The noble ladies who had once laughed at me as weak now prostrated beneath the vermilion steps, temperably reverent. In the 9th year of Longye, the eldest princess Yuan Suning rebelled. Her proclamation spread throughout the realm, accusing me of poisoning her imperial father and usurping the Yuan clan's empire, stating she wished to avenge her father, wash away the hatred for her mother, and return justice to all under heaven. The proclamation cited classics and used flowery language, yet it could not conceal the truth. She was nothing but a person with an empty title. In less than 20 days, my army advanced with the unstoppable momentum of splitting bamboo. That night, the family reunion meal of her entire household was laid out on the Naihei Bridge. During my 30 years of rule, I eliminated corrupt practices, reduced taxes, reorganized officials, and stripped the great families of power layer by layer. In the end, even those from humble backgrounds could hold their heads high as people. History books recorded with exquisite brushwork that I had opened a precedent for 1,000 years. The first female emperor. Those words were written stroke by them as they knelt on the ground. I stood there after reading, casually closed it.